Hello my dear friends, you're in the middle of a summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in the world on the 16th of March of 2026. Today we have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. According to media, the allies of the United States of America refused to join the US coalition. Countries responding to Trump's proposed Strait of Hormuz Navy coalition: France refused to join, Australia declined participation, Japan refused deployment, United Kingdom reluctant, South Korea reviewing the proposal, and China, of course, rejecting military involvement. And this is something that disappointed the President of the United States of America so much. President Trump warns NATO faces a very bad future if allies fail to help the United States in Iran war, according to the Financial Times. Another important thing, we're always there for NATO. We're helping them with Ukraine. It's got an ocean in between us. It doesn't affect us, but we've helped them. It would be interesting to see what country wouldn't help us with a very small endeavor, which is just keeping the strait open. So these are the statements of the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, and we see that he's very disappointed. But you know that several statements that were made by the Europeans have some point. For example, very interesting statement was made by the German authorities. They said that what does the world expect? What does Donald Trump expect from a handful or two handfuls of European frigates to achieve there in the Strait of Hormuz, which the powerful American Navy cannot manage alone? So, and he is completely correct. The European countries will not be able to do anything with the Strait of Hormuz if the most important Navy forces are not able to do anything with the same situation. United Kingdom Prime Minister Keir Starmer said Britain will not be drawn into a wider war in the Middle East, while announcing financial support for households struggling with rising heating oil costs amid the Iranian conflict. So all these things, all these statements mean just one thing, that the United States of America have several options. The first one, and probably the easiest one, is to announce that the United States of America won the war over Iran, won this military operation over Iran, that the Iranians are completely defeated, and so on, and many other different things could be announced by the President of the United States of America. And after all these statements, the United States could remove their forces from this region. But the main problem is that this situation most likely will not help the United States of America to unblock the Strait of Hormuz, because today the Iranians made several statements and basically they issued an ultimatum to the states of the Persian Gulf. The Iranian agency Tasnim named the preliminary conditions under which Iran could open the Strait of Hormuz. Iran demands guaranteed lifting of sanctions, impossible; withdrawal of American bases, 2 times impossible; return of frozen assets, never impossible; and development of trade not in dollars, completely impossible from the United States of America. Which means that in the States, it's not enough just to announce that Donald Trump managed to win the entire Iran and so on. The only flag that can show us that indeed the Iranians were completely defeated is the unblocking of the Strait of Hormuz. So that is why, and due to the statements that were made by the European countries and so on, most likely the United States of America would be forced to unblock the Strait of Hormuz by themselves, alone, completely alone, without any support and supply, and which means that they were gonna have to do this physically with own troopers. And during the previous 24 hours, we received lots of satellite pictures that show the exact position of the US Tripoli amphibious assault group, and as you can see, these amphibious assault group speeds towards the Middle East. Between March 14 and 16, the ship accelerated to 19-20 knots on a sustained southwest, heading through the South China Sea, covering over 400 nautical miles per day. As of the latest position, it is approaching the northern entrance of the Strait of Malacca, the checkpoint between the South China Sea and the Indian Ocean. Total distance covered approximately 1,800 nautical miles. So we start receiving updates about this amphibious group several days ago, and almost every single day we were receiving satellite pictures and we were adjusting the map of possible approximate position of this group. And based on all these things, all these statements, we can make a conclusion that it will take probably 10 or even more days before this amphibious group arrives in the area of the Arabic Sea to the southeast of Iran, and it will take probably even 20 days before this group who is ready to begin ground operation in the area of the Gulf of Oman, in the area of the Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz, and the most important, on the territory or around the territory of Hark Island. But the problem is, and the main problem of this situation is that this amphibious group most likely won't be able even to get to this Hark Island or even to cross the Persian Gulf itself, because this is not an easy job, and I will try to explain you why. During the previous 24 hours, we received this strange video. This is probably the strangest video from one side, but from the other side, it seems that something has already happened in the area of the Strait of Hormuz. Here we can see the Pakistani Aframax tanker Karachi transited on March 15-16 with the AEs turned on, openly broadcasting its position, unusual if the area were fully mined. So, and it roads hugged Iranian waters, suggesting controlled or safer lines. So according to this video, we see that the Pakistani tanker was sailing exactly along or something like this, along this line between to the north of the island of Larak Island, to the south of the Hormuz Island. Then this vessel moved in the eastern direction, and then this vessel began moving in the southern direction, trying to leave the Strait of Hormuz. So several experts are trying to tell us that the Iranians have already mined a part of the Strait of Hormuz, something like this, and which means that if, of course, this information is correct, then this, no matter how many vessels, military corps the United States of America send in the direction of the Middle East, they will not be able to pass the Strait of Hormuz without being damaged, which means that if this amphibious group is moving in this area, the only thing that this amphibious group will be able to do is to land, of course, to carry out the ground operation, but most likely somewhere in the southeastern part of Iran without entering the Strait of Hormuz itself, which means that the Strait of Hormuz will remain blocked by the Iranians, or the United States of America will carry out another ground operation attacking this territory from another side. So as you can see, not everything is not so simple, and we see that the conflict from one side is reducing. We're talking about attacks, we're talking about drone usage, because now everybody understands that the most important thing is the Strait of Hormuz, and only the unblocking of the Strait of Hormuz will determine when the conflict, when the stabilization comes in this region. So there are two ways: either the physical unblocking of the strait or the diplomatic unblocking. But the diplomatic conditions for unblocking of the Strait of Hormuz is something unacceptable by the United States of America. Furthermore, we should keep in our minds the situation with the aircraft carrier groups. These attack groups are located both in the Arabian Sea and the Red Sea, without any chances to move further, because if the Gerald Air Force aircraft carrier group begins moving in the southern direction, very likely the Houthis will determine these steps as aggression, and they will attack this aircraft carrier group with hypersonic missiles. And of course, the SATCOM will never risk with this aircraft carrier group in this case. And as for the Abraham Lincoln, we see that this aircraft carrier group is completely concentrated on protection of the southern part of the state of Oman. We're talking about the city of Salah and the port infrastructure of the city. We have a lot of, as you can see, oil refineries in this area that works with the purpose to stabilize global oil trade market. And we cannot say about the same thing about the United Arab Emirates. We see that the Iranians continue attacking oil infrastructure of this state in its eastern parts. The only pass possible or more or less reliable roads for the United Arab Emirates to expand their export or to replace the lost, let's say, lost export capabilities with this situation. But we see that the Iranians are attacking this territory with missiles and with drones, and today we got several reports that either the United Arab Emirates have already halted use this infrastructure or are about to do this. Anyway, the situation is very difficult for this region, and we see that as of now nothing shows us that the conflict could be resolved in days, most likely weeks or even months. Some European countries today stated that they expect the conflict could be resolved by autumn of 2026 and not earlier. And of course, this situation is something like the beginning of the golden age for the Russian Federation. Of course, the positions of Russia are still very difficult. The Russians are, of course, trying to stabilize the situation. The Russians are trying to protect their vessels, their assets through the world, with the purpose not to allow these assets to be captured by the European countries or something like this. For example, today we received the report that the price of Russian oil in India has reached a record high amid growing demand for the Urals grade, reports Bloomberg. On Friday, the price of Urals oil on the west coast of India reached $98 per barrel. This price, including the cost of delivery, is the highest since Russia redirected oil exports in India after invasion of Ukraine in early 2022, which means that the Russians are earning a lot of money from this situation. And the thing is that now the Russians don't think that this is a very good idea to stop the conflict in Ukraine. Today we had reports that negotiations to end the Ukraine conflict on pause due to war or in Iran. That was stated and that was confirmed by the Kremlin spokesperson Peskov. Furthermore, this information was also confirmed by the Ukrainian authorities. According to Ukrainians, the presidential administration believes that the negotiations with Russia are doomed, at least until the global oil prices fall, and this situation could drag on for a long time. The war in the Middle East has effectively removed one of the main incentives for Putin to reach an agreement. Russia is currently selling oil at inflated prices and is partially closing its budget gap with this revenue. So the Russians are earning lots of money, and of course the Russians are interested to keep the situation for as long as possible. They will be able to earn lots of money during this year, and this money could be enough for the Russians to finance the conflict on the territory in Ukraine for another year or maybe even more. The question is whether the Ukrainians have the same capabilities to support the war on their territory for so long, and obviously the answer is no. Of course, the Ukrainians are trying to find a solution how to stabilize the energy sector, how to do many things, and today we received the report that Kiev urgently convenes an energy Rammstein. Ukraine will ask European Union countries for another 5 billion euros to increase electricity imports and will gather European partners for a special summit at which it will demand from Europeans new loans. So more money, and once again more money. But the problem is for Ukraine, not just like a problem, it's the biggest problem ever, is the city of Budapest, and more precisely the Prime Minister of Hungary, Viktor Orban. We received lots of videos from Hungary. We received millions and thousands of people that went to the street and under the slogan, "We will not be a Ukrainian colony, we will not give money to Ukraine," and so on. I would like to remind you that in 2 weeks or something like this, the biggest battle on the territory of the biggest political battle on the territory of the European Union will take place. And telling the truth, very difficult even to imagine what is going to happen in Hungary, because Hungary is surrounded by Ukraine, by NATO countries, by pro-Ukrainian European countries, and obviously we'll see a lot of provocations there with just one purpose: to remove Viktor Orban from his position, with the purpose to establish a pro-Ukrainian government which will allow Ukraine to enter the European Union and to receive 90 billion euros loan from the European countries. So this is going to be probably the most powerful political battle of the spring of 2026, and of course we will follow this situation in coming weeks. Now let's switch some back to Ukraine and let's discuss the most important updates. During the previous 24 hours, both the Russians and the Ukrainians attacked each other with a significant number of drones. The Ukrainians, according to the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, attacked in the direction of the city of Moscow using almost 500 drones. The Russians, according to pro-Russian sources, destroyed almost everything that was launched from the Ukrainian side, and telling the truth, by the end of the 16th of March, we haven't received anything that can confirm that the Ukrainians managed to deal at least any damage in the Moscow direction. But as for the southern directions, during the previous 24 hours, the Ukrainians managed to hit oil refinery to the north of the city by the name of Labinsk in the southern parts of Russia. So this oil depot was damaged. As you can see, a very huge fire occurred in this area. Most likely, these tankers contained petroleum products and they were damaged significantly. And the Russians, from their side, attacked the territory of Ukraine. And the most important is that the Russians attacked Ukraine not overnight, but the Russians attacked Ukraine during the day, over the day. And the Ukrainians reported that during the night, the Russians used 211 drones as of the morning of the 16th of March by the 11th a.m. And later, the Russians began attacking the territory of Ukraine with cruise missiles. And the sources reported that the Russians began using new cruise missiles and the Russians attacked Ukraine with new drones. And the most important thing is that the Russians began doing this using new missiles and new drones during the time when everybody can see them. Civilians, people, when people can take the parts of these drones on the streets and make the video. And so it's the situation is if the Russians wanted the Ukrainians to see new weapons and to show these new weapons to the population of Ukraine. For example, today we received lots of videos from the central part of the city of Kiev. Here we can see parts of Russian drones in this area, and experts are saying that the Russians began using new drones. Not just drones, but new drones with AI. So this is the next generation of Lancet drones with AI, and the most important thing is that these AI drones don't need to have connections with the mainland, with the command center of the Russian Federation. So we are talking about swarm of drones that are flying above some area. They have connections between themselves and they have AI, and they, without connection with the central, with headquarters, can understand, can find, can determine which target is the target, military target, or which target is, let's say, civilian target. So that's why they will not attack this territory. And this is a huge revolution in the conflict on the territory of Ukraine, because the biggest problem that the Russians have faced since the beginning of the special military operation is communication. And now with these attacks during the daylight, the Russians were trying to show the Ukrainians that they have resolved this problem. Now they can send drones deep inside of the territory of Ukraine without even giving these drones a target to attack, because the drones using AIs, using swarm technology, will determine by themselves what to attack and what not to attack. And as I understand, these strikes could be very, very, very precious. So let's wait and see, of course, what is going to happen next. But if this information is true, then Ukrainians probably start having huge problems. Another important statement today we received from the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation. According to information we have, Russians, the Supreme Commander-in-Chief, instructed the Dnieper and Vostok groups to continue the offensive on Zaporizhzhia. Russia's negotiation team position will be reviewed, taking into account the final transition of the Kiev regime to a policy of state terrorism. That was stated by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sergei Lavrov, and he is trying to tell us that the group of forces East and the group of forces Dnipro received the order from the President of the Russian Federation to continue offensive operation in the direction of the city of Zaporizhzhia. And the Russians will review their, let's say, previous demands. Most likely they will change them. And according to, for example, Syrsky, the chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the Russian Federation views the Zaporizhzhia direction as the main one. A large concentration of Russian forces and resources is being observed there. So the final battle of the 2026 is going to be the city of Zaporizhzhia and not the cities of Slaviansk and Kramatorsk. So the Russians launched their major offensive operation. This offensive operation started several days ago. During the previous 24 hours, we received lots of videos of how Russians were bombing and attacking this territory, and the most important that during the previous days, we have received lots of changes on the ground. We haven't received almost anything during the winter period of time, just one exception, the Ukrainian counterattacks in the northern direction, and almost nothing to the west of the river of Gaichur. But these days, as you can see, we received a lot. We received a lot, which means that the Russians, first of all, are tasked to take under complete control the city of Orekhov, and then the Russians will continue offensive operation towards the city of Zaporizhzhia. The Russians are not tasked to answer the city itself. The Russians are tasked to establish complete control over the main roads that are moving in the direction of the city with artillery, which in the end will force the Ukrainians to abandon the city, because the city is located on the Russian side of the river of Dnipro. Very likely the Russians may have big results in this area during this 2026. As for the, let's say, classic directions during the previous 24 hours, we haven't received almost anything. Small changes around the city of Konstantinovka and small changes in the Dobropolye direction. The Russians are advancing, but it seems that they're not planning to use these directions as main directions. And we see that the Russians are improving the status of the northern directions. During the previous 24 hours, we have recorded lots of changes in the area of the city of Sumy. The Russians answered the next village in this area, the village of Potapovka, and the Russians intensified their attacks on positions of the armored forces of Ukraine in the villages nearby. Lots of attacks were recorded by the Russians, which means that here we'll see lots of clashes in coming days. The Russians, according to different pro-Russian sources, answered the city of Miropolye from the east and managed to improve their position significantly. This information was provided by pro-Russian sources. This is a very important village on the way towards the city of Sumy itself, and the Russians, according to information we have, increased their positions and improved their positions in the Kharkiv direction in this big forest along the border. So the northern direction is becoming a primary direction for Russians for military campaign of 2026. And that's it for today. The Military Summary channel reminds us to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.